So we're at Yellowwood now, and they get off with the elevator, and they've got the tree from Yellowwood, and this is when they start to, and a lot of this stuff is more actually from the prequel trailer they released, not so much from the teasers at the time. So I'm jumping back and forth a little bit, but in Yellowwood and in Side Effects is like maybe the most important early music video in regards to Skzverse stuff that there is. Like Elevator and Side Effects are the most important, I feel, for, and District 9 are the most important, I feel, for establishing big Skzverse events. So Side Effects is the very first time that we see the timelines diverge. We see them split. We see them have two choices, and this is just a very common motif throughout all of Skiz content, is that there's always a choice, and every time they don't make a choice, the timeline branches again, or they make a choice and the timeline branches again, whether it's yes or no, whatever. So we see them get a ticket to the new world, and one version of the kids decides to take the ticket, get on the bus, have the creepy bus driver with the shadow hand tattoo on his hand with the hook. The creepy bus driver, who's smiling, gives them the ticket, and they, go on the bus. But then the other version of the kids, the ones that we stuck with throughout the fixed timeline, doesn't get on the bus.
Yeah.
Literally a split in the music video of the two different timelines, and that is when it is first established that it is these are two parallel worlds. So these two worlds in the Skzverse are the same, but they are parallel. So this is where those are the timelines, right? This is also circling back to what we said earlier about how there was two ions. This also, circling back, ties into the whole, there are multiple versions of them. And a lot of people, a lot of stays, get really wrapped up in the idea that there are clones. And I personally disagree with that. I personally disagree with the fact that they're clones. I believe that they are multiple versions of themselves, and that is a very different type of doppelganger to a clone. Because a clone is just a copy and paste of a person from the beginning. Whether they're all clones to begin with, it doesn't really matter. But I believe that focusing so much on Ian being like a clone of some kind is doing a disservice to the storyline. That's my hot take. So let's see that there's two worlds, and a lot of people think that the ions were split. So a lot of people think that the ions from the original I Am Not trailer, when Ian's sitting on the bus and he looks out the bus window, so many things happen on buses, oh my god. He looks out the bus window, he sees another Ian sitting there, that Ian smiles at him, the Ian on the bus gets off the bus and, yeets. He's like, I'm out of here. And the smiling, we can presume, gets on the bus and continues in place of that Ian. So there's been this idea that the Ions were split like way back then, and we think that they're actually, yes, like different variants. That is what the J270 said. Yeah, so I don't believe they're clones, I believe they're variants, and are different versions of the people. And so
we'll get to the bicolored eyes in a bit.
Anyway, back to my notes. Okay, yeah, so it's been long theorized in Stable that the ions switch. And also there's been Chan has openly talked about how Ian is like different to the rest of them in the storyline, and so is Felix, and basically that they can like see things or do things, or so they're just different. And in I Am Not only do we see that there's two Ions and that they somehow switch, but there's also Felix freaking out about the mirrors, and he and other kids have been freaking out about mirrors since like the beginning of the Skzverse. And there's something in the mirrors, or they see something in the mirrors. It's always been a thing, and he smashes the mirror. Again, we're constantly seeing this concept of smashing barriers. So, okay, back to the timeline. So we're at Yellowwood, we're at Side Effects, everything splits. So we've got, and at this stage, I believe we've got three worlds. We've got the fixed timeline, which is the road not taken, where we're at following them. The second one is the parallel timeline, which is the road of comfort, the one where they get on the bus. And the third one is what I like to call normal world, which is where the grow up, on track, be me, O, X, etc. Winter Falls are all set in normal world, and they all have a linear narrative that is chronological, and it is set in normal world. There are no powers, nothing sus is happening. It's just, I mean, except for them having crushes, which I have lots of theories about, but the normal world is a fixed world, right?
Mm.
Okay. So at this stage, we've got 3 worlds established. I'm going to be so embarrassed if, for whatever reason, the kids do see this. Anyway, that just popped into my head.
No, listen, we're not that off. They're huge nerds. We're not that off. We might be off of a couple things, but it makes sense.
I've just been thinking about this for so long. For anyone who's wondering, yeah, I've been literally thinking about this stuff since like 2019. So I have a lot to get off my chest. So side effects. We've got, so they go on the bus, some of them don't. We've got 3 established universes, the 2 parallels, the fixed time, and the normal world. In my opinion, side effects and Levanta are like insanely important. So Levanta, not to get super nerdy, Levanta literally means Mediterranean wind. And this whole idea of wind and fighting against wind, or things coming along the wind, is a theme that has been all over Skiz stuff since Levanta. It might have been from before, I don't know, but like, and also I don't know everything, by the way, guys. Like, don't.
Yeah.
I'm not like.
Disclaimer. These are all theories. These are all our imagination and the connections we are making, but nothing is like confirmed. Like, we don't have some like connection to Stray Kids officially.
God, imagine. Yeah, so Levanta literally means Mediterranean wind, and there are so many things of like, you can feel it on the wind, and like phrasing, and like literally like the thunderous ones come on the wind in Thunderous. A lot of things in Easy they talk about I can feel the winds. In the prequel trailer they can feel the winds. They literally physically fight the wind in Top. There's a lot of things about wind. Levanta literally means the Mediterranean wind. So basically, at the end of the Clay series, Levanta isn't Clay like 3, like the third key. They don't need a key because they are the key. They've figured out throughout Clay series that they're actually the ones who are the keys to the universe and the keys to their reality, that it's within them the whole time. They don't actually need a physical key. So we don't see any keys anymore. Instead, the 2 moons, I didn't even say this. I assume, so I didn't think that I needed to say this, but also in case anyone doesn't know, there are 2 moons throughout the Clay series. When the worlds split, we literally see 2 moons. And 2 comes later throughout the Skzverse stuff. But yes, it means that there are 2. I cannot stop looking at names popping up as they join. I don't know if you're looking at it too, but I
keep looking at it too. I'm trying to like read comments too, but I don't want to like interrupt you. But yeah, I keep seeing them too.
Yeah, so the 2 moons, we see these 2 moons like everywhere, and it's basically showing that there are these 2 worlds. And same with how we see the Upside Down and the regular cities. It's basically just a visual indicator that there are 2 worlds. And so this is all the worlds are distinctly separate until the 2 moons collide right before the Go Live album. So I'll talk about, I can see Julie making comments. I'll talk about specific MV stuff after I establish, like, basically right now I just want to kind of establish the Skzverse things, and then we can talk about specific MVs after, because it all kind of ties in. But it's really hard to talk about specific MV stuff without explaining.
You kind of have to establish the linear timeline before we can get into the what you call the wibbly wobblies.
Yeah. I mean, I got that from Doctor Who. I can't trademark that.
But you call them that, so that's how I refer to them now in my mind, like the wibbly wobblies.
the wibbly wobblies. Yeah, so in the prequel trailer, the two moons collide and it creates one shining light, and that shining light brings the kids back to their true selves, which we see in God's menu. So everything up until that point was very distinct worlds, and now they're not. Now they're one. So they've combined, but they're what my here's where I get a bit out of pocket about it. My theory is that we've always had this shadow world that wasn't a physical world, like what we see in the mirrors, what we see hinted at in a lot of the videos, but it wasn't enough of like a real world to kind of be brought into the multiverse. Like if anyone in the comments, anyone watches Marvel stuff, you know that there's like other universes exist, but it doesn't mean that they can interact with each other distinctly unless something happens or unless they're able to. Like we know that like in the MCU that all these different universes exist, but it doesn't mean that they can necessarily be together, right? Mm-hmm. So my theory is that when the moons collided, the bright light created the shadow world. Well, I call it the shadow world, but it's also like the upside down world. So it kind of brought that back into reality like stronger than ever, basically. So with the shadow world, and we see this throughout a lot of stuff, like super clearly from God's menu onwards. So God's menu, that's when they're their true selves. That's when they're their God version of themselves, the ones who have the power to create, essentially. And then we've got the shadow version, who are chaotic and cheeky and up to mischief, which are the ones in like Easy and Annie and so they're the cheeky ones. They're up to mischief. They're sus. So for reference, the God version of the kids, I believe they follow the red colors. So when they've got one red eye, one like regular eye, those are like the God versions. And the green is the shadow world, or the upside down world is the green colors with the green eyes, because which was so frustrating, because when sorry, I keep getting distracted. When in the ordinary trailer he gets one green eye, that's not the first time we've seen one green eye. Hyunjin has one green eye in Easy. It is, we this stuff a lot. So anyway.
It's because we don't look for it, and they make Felix's so obvious. They like zoom in so much on Felix, and all the other ones they kind of just sprinkle them around. They don't make it that obvious. Like it took me a while to realize that Changbin had different colored eyes in God's menu.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think part of the reason I have noticed so much of this stuff is just because I've rewatched so many things, because I watch so many reactors, watching so many times, like so many new things. It took me ages to realize that Hyunjin, like I always knew it, but like I was like, oh okay, like maybe it was just a weird lighting thing. It was only until like recently, like maybe a couple of months ago, that I was like, oh no, that's intentional. That wasn't like a fucked up effect. Anyway, so we've got the two timelines. One's the shadow world, one's like the regular world. Moving forward through Go Live and in life, we see them start to interact. The two different boys are interacting, and particularly in the All In video, we see them literally in the same universe interacting with each other. So the ones in the cop uniforms are the main timeline kids, and the ones that are being cheeky and up to no good are the shadow version of the kids. And this is where my brain starts to go on fire, because
this is where the fun starts.
This is where the fun starts. This is where we see them interacting, and we see them noticing each other and perceiving each other, but we also see them perceiving us still, because like I said, they keep breaking like the fourth wall. So when in All In, you've got them literally mirroring each other, because it's, still kind of mirror worlds, but not really, because it's upside down shadow. Like, obviously your shadow follows you, and like they've been doing this shadow stuff since forever. Like I know, like if anyone follows me on Twitter, I've been tweeting a lot of stuff about Kingdom and the shadow world and my shadow theories, but they've been doing shadow choreography since Levanta. They were doing shadow and mirror choreography since way before then. But the whole idea of the shadow self being your push and pull has been a concept with Skiz since like pre-debut, essentially. Like this isn't a new
Side Effects choreography. The choreography of Side Effects is so obvious now. The fact that there's like member, dark, all black person, member, all black person, and they're connected, but they're push and pull. It's like literally.
Yeah, so the shadows, they push and pull with the shadow versions of themselves throughout all of this. What does someone say? Do you see a tie together with Side Effects and Freeze in God's Menu? 100% yes. Although I feel like Side Effects ties together with everything. I am like team Side Effects. I am all aboard the train of Side Effects, underrated.
One of my favorite songs.
Yeah, but even the different versions, because remember, like every time they do the different performances and live performances of the songs, Chan is the one who arranges and produces those. Like those aren't just like, oh cool, this version of Side Effects is like a trippy like EDM track. Like no, Chan did that. And when like, and I've been so obsessed with this one performance from the Go Live Beyond Live show from 2020, or was it 2021? No, 2020. And they've got all these red tapes, and I believe it's what inspired the Kingdom performance with all the shadows push and pull. And I also believe it's what's inspired Venom, because, or like Gomijul, because it looks like spider webs. They're controlling spider webs, and they're pulling each other and pushing each other with all of these red webs, and the track is like real EDM-y, sticky, the same way that Venom is. And so, but I also believe that's what inspired Kingdom, and I believe that the Kingdom performances, which is where we're going next anyway, because that's after In Life and Go Live. So I'm still on track. Don't worry. The the Kingdom performances, every single one of them is a part of the story. Like every single one of them gives more and more information for the story. They have all of the push and pull with the shadows, and they're fighting. And like Changbin literally says in the Kingdom behind the scenes that at first they were push and pull and fighting against the shadows and fighting, within themselves, and all those metaphors, blah blah blah. Fuck metaphors for a moment. Actual shadow people. They're actually fighting shadow people, pushing and pulling shadow versions of themselves, and then they come together in God's Menu as the God versions of themselves who can fight back against that. And we literally see that in the Kingdom performance, like literally in front of us. We can visually see it, but that's also what happens throughout the Clay series, push and pull with the shadows, to God's Menu, where they're able to fight back and create their own, So is that why Felix said he's a demon slayer? It's like you're in my mind. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. Because he says, what does he say? He says, I execute, call me demon slayer. I'm not going to rap it, but that's it.
I'm not going to rap it.
And, so same with throughout all the Kingdom performances. So that was the first one, like the first shadowy one. And Miro performed, I believe, if they're tying this into the Shadowverse theories, I believe that the Miro performance was essentially like the shadow version of the kids doing that. And they've got the green light, which is the green we think symbolizes the shadow world and stuff. And I think a lot of people get too tied up in good and evil. Let's fuck good and evil for a moment. Like let's leave that. Let's pop that in the fridge for later. Because yeah, so they've got the green in there. They've got the green eye in the background, which is the green eye we've seen easy, like everywhere. The green eyes everywhere. They've got the green thing in their mouth that they hold, and they're doing that. And they've got the little vial, the little that they smash. Anyway, there's so many things.
I'm getting hot, so I'll put my hair up really quick. Sorry, but continue. I'm listening.
So that's the first one, and the whole like wolf thing, and we can tie wolves into all of this stuff like a shit ton. But we'll do that later. And yep, so that, and then the whole shadow pull back, blah blah blah. With the red things, and now we've seen the red things in the Side Effects Beyond Live performance. We've seen the red tape in Kingdom, and we're now seeing the webbing stuff in Red Lights. We saw it in Red Lights, and which is all about control. And we saw it in it's all about control.
It's about driving.
It's about driving. And it's about and we see it in Venom. And I think Sungmin is like real sus about it because he's literally like doing stuff. Anyway, but we also see the red roping and stuff with when they're planning well, but that's what rope in general to have like plan stuff. Anyway, yeah, so we see all that stuff. And then throughout Kingdom we've got
I see you stuff.
All these different versions. There are so many different things that explicitly reference the upside down world and the shadow world. Too. Oh, I wonder if you can see. See, upside down, literally mirroring himself.
Chan, yeah.
And we've got when it goes from live to evil. Yeah, there's a whole bunch. Yeah, so I've got all these things saved elsewhere. You can see the I'll Be Your Man performance. Well,
I love that performance.
Is really important. Also, for reference, there's also heaps of metaphors of falling. So we see Changbin fall through broken glass, which is very much like ordinary. We see Felix that which I think is really related to ordinary. I'm sorry, I'm going back and forth so much. I think it's related to ordinary because in I'll Be a Man, Felix says, promise I'll be by your side, swear to God I'll risk my life, no hope, but still I try. The heavens retreat from the help you seek, forbidden negotiations, you risk everything. 2 choices, all you have to do is just pick, sacrifice your life with the abyss, and they're always falling. Always falling.
Which then kind of ties into like what I think is happening with the whole falling and yeah.
Some more falling from Kingdom. They're always
falls, falling. Changbin falls.
So I don't actually think Felix is. I'm looking at the comments. I don't think Felix is possessed. I don't think any of them are possessed at this stage. What I think is that Felix had to make a choice. They all have to make choices. And the colors behind Felix when he's doing that rap are the like bright green color, like the shadow world. And I think that throughout Kingdom they had to come to terms with the fact that like the shadow, verse is there essentially. And we've seen this whole having to accept that and dive into it. Why was there a smiley face before? Smiley faces represent stuff in the shadow world because every time they're fucking so smiley faces are everywhere. And I believe every time that there is super smiley face stuff everywhere, that's shadow world stuff. And when I think there's lightning bolts, that's the thunderous version of the kids, the main timeline stuff. And we even see that on like the album artwork. It'll be like 3 pictures of each one.
So at this point, I feel like we've established that not only are there multiple versions of them, but I feel like this is where we start playing with the idea that they're not in chronological order. The music videos, and each music video doesn't necessarily mean you're only looking at one version of them. So this is where you kind of start playing with what version are we looking at when we look at each music video or each moment in a music video.
Yeah. Would it be like superhero? Would it be like superhero thunderous and villains are ordinary? Yes and no. I believe it's more of a hero and anti-hero situation. I don't believe any version of the kids are straight up villains because I don't think every bad guy verse is metaphorically bad or systemically bad. They're not just like, ooh, you're a villain, nasty. It's all a bit more deeper than that. So I believe it's heroes and anti-heroes, and the actual Skiz themselves actually call them the thunderous ones and the dangerous. Let me show you. Well, I don't know if it'll show up. I've got a whole thread on Twitter I can like show you guys in detail of these photos. But in All In, they're wanted posters for the shadow version of the kids. They're called the Dangerous. And then right after all of this stuff in Thunderous, they're called the Thunderous ones. So I believe we've got the thunderous ones, the dangerous ones, and then obviously normal world, which is a whole other thing. But in All In, you can see in the background they're like on the boards and stuff. They've got caution and then photos of the same people, but the different versions of them with question marks, being like, which version is this? So they're already from All In. They're already all in on the theory that. Sorry, I'll leave. That was such a bad joke. They're already they're already like figuring out the different versions of themselves and who's who, and very much like someone said earlier, I think calling them a variant, like the MCU variants, is a really good way to put it, because they're not clones. Like, they may have originally been clones forever ago if you want to go down that route, but I personally don't believe they're clones. I believe they're variants. And remember, variants and this whole idea of multiple universe stuff is not, while it's new in the MCU, it's not new in comics, it's not new for Marvel, it's not new for sci-fi and fantasy.
DC, pretty much any sci-fi storyline at some point messes with multiverse.
Yeah, like none of this is new. And I think when we're talking about like, Marvel connections and references and things, I think people get too hung up on specific connections, because like we're using this as a way to describe what we think is happening, but it's actually explicitly, yes, this is this. Like, I mean, are there heaps of Venom references in the way that Venom and symbiotes attach onto a person and then can control them, but then can go back and forth, kind of, part of my whole shadow version theory thing. Yes. Did Chan talk about Tom Hardy a shit ton? Yes. Do I believe he was explicitly inspired by Venom? Probably not. But it's a really cool parallel, right? And like, parallel thinking exists. Like the new Spider-Man movie with the multiverse, yes. Like that, like the MCU multiverse combination in general, like with Doctor Strange. The new Spider-Man movie, the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. What else? WandaVision, Loki. All of the new Marvel stuff all talk about this whole variant multiverse type things, and how